Everyone, this is another episode, Geared Perspectives. So today we're going to be talking about statistics and player efficiency. I want to say that I've done this video before, but I've never released it because it was during the time after, I think, MES, and they were announcing that MLG was coming out, that there were no statistics, there were no numbers. Everyone's saying, oh, KDR doesn't matter, points don't matter, you play in a certain position, that don't matter. Well, in the scheme of history, about talking about player performance and how well a player's performing or how much they're underperforming, we have to talk about statistics and how well they've done. And it's something that's never been tracked in Gears of War efficiently. It's always been done under an umbrella of KD, which is kills to deaths, which really doesn't show you any value of what the player actually did. It doesn't show you how many shots that they hit, doesn't do anything like that. I went through it with Murray and Ryan Fools, who's the coach of Envious, and I said, this is what I want to do, and I created an original formula, how I would break it down and make the numbers for it, and then we came up with a better system. So in this video, I'm going to show you both for player proficiency as what it was originally designed to be and how it works, how the numbers actually came out, and it shows a little bit more accurately than what the player did, because it accounts for the point system, which I didn't account for originally. And this is coming after MLG Columbus. Those who don't know, ended yesterday. Enemy won at the 50K tournament, and then it was announced that we're going to have a 6-tournament pro circuit through MLG and Gfinity, which is going to be happening in starting in October. And it's going to have a $1 million prize pool. Now, this is the reason we need statistics, because during the broadcast, people were talking about how we were filling up space, but we weren't talking about numbers. There's no history of numbers in Gears of War at all. There's nothing really to talk about. You actually have to go back and watch all the VODs and try to make the numbers work. And that's super difficult, and it's super hard when you haven't tracked all the matches. Every match needs to be streamed, or someone has to be on point with it the entire time so that you're tracking the right numbers and correctly evaluating the players. Now, Gears statistics has been on the lowest point of the totem pole in casting, because it's been, we talk about this is the best player with this weapon. But we don't talk about everything else in the scheme of that. We're not talking about how many kills they had, what they did with it, how effective they are with the sniper rifle when they pick it up. We just talk about baseline numbers. Kills, deaths, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't help anybody, and it really hurts us in the long run because we're not tracking things, and we lose a lot of credibility on our casting because we are just, it sounds like we're making stuff up. We can't go back in history and talk about how good the Insanes were in comparison to other teams and where they started declining in their performance because there's no stats to back it up. It's just based on people who've been at the events, watching the events. We can't say who the best player in history is because there's no numbers to back it up. It's all based on opinion. And that's not the way it needs to be, especially going into the future of esports. We need to track numbers. We need data. We need information so that we can be giving the correct information to new viewers so they can understand this is where this player stacks up in the scheme of history. Now, we're 3 games behind, and we've never stat tracked appropriately, so we're in a super big hole going into Gears 4 where we actually have to start doing this and start accounting for all these little things. I've started on this. I've been working on the ESL Pro League ones, and it takes forever. I actually have to sit down and watch 8-9 hours of footage to capture every kill, every point, calculate whether it went to a shotgun kill, a headshot with a pistol. It's crazy hard. It's not something that's really easy to put together. That's why it takes a little bit. I thought it would take about a month. It takes a lot longer. It's a lot of time sitting in front of a computer trying to track things. So what I'm going to show you today is going to be the first week of the ESL Pro League that I was able to complete. Murray and I have formatted. We're working on more. It'll keep coming out at some point. But I'm going to show you the original, how I was going to calculate player proficiency and track stats. And then I'm going to show you how it actually came out, and it works 1,000 times better, and it's also less math. So we're going to go into that real quick, and I will show you guys on the screen. Okay, so this is the original design for the player proficiency. It's based on kills divided by team kills, deaths divided by team deaths, assists divided by team assists, revives divided by team revives, and then divided by 4 because there's 4 players in the game. So this is the original design of how I was going to do this. And I showed it to Ryan Fools, and Ryan said, why don't we just do points and see which one comes out more accurately. Now, this is just the baseline example from Genesis, who was on MBN, of his first week in the Pro League and what he did. The team stats, they had 54 kills, 55 deaths, 39 assists, 24 revives. Genesis that week had 14 kills, 16 deaths, 20 assists, 4 revives. Pretty easy. You add the numbers up. Of the team kills, he had about 25%. Of the team's deaths, he had about 30%. Of the team's assists, he had 67%. And of the revives, he had about 16% of the team's revives. Comes out to a whopping 1.39. Then you divide that by 4 players. You come out to roughly 34.75 or 35% player efficiency. Or proficiency. It's wrong word. Efficiency is how efficient you are with your stats. Proficiency is how proficient you are with the numbers that you're given. So it's actually player proficiency. It actually changed from when I originally did this. Now, this is the original formula. Pretty self-explanatory towards base numbers, but it's missing something because it's not 100% accurate, because Gears of War uses points. And you need to have a point system to calculate how much the player actually did, if they did better or worse. So that is going to come over to this. This is week 1 of the Pro League. This is all the stats. This is all the numbers. Each page has everything on it. And it's calculated into team things. Now, I've tracked several different things. I've tracked all the base stats that you have. Team points, which is the most valuable thing that we have, because it says how much damage the player did and what they did with it. So if we're going to look, we're going to go up here to the top of this so that I can do this really easy. So we looked at Genesis. I said he had a 35% roughly player efficiency rating. Or in the original sense, player proficiency rating. So we come up here, we divide this formula. You can see the cells. G4 divided by G2, which is this one divided by points. He actually comes up with a little bit higher. It's actually a little bit more accurate. He actually has 37% of his team's points. He was proficient with 35% of the resources. You look at Phenomenon, who had more points, and he ended up having, which you're looking about 41%. Now, if this all adds up, you're roughly 100% in statistics going across the board. Now, this is just baseline on a performance in the matches that you played. This is all the maps. This shows which ones they won, which ones they lost. They lost 3, won 1. Okay, so we're talking about this. So there's an extreme where certain players are going to do better than others. I will show you the biggest example of this, of who does the most work for their team. I have to find it. So let's talk about Envious in the first week of the Pro League, because this is the most glaring point, and it supports the fact that we're praised as one of the better players in the league because of how much he does overall. And this is why you also have to look at KDR, right? Praised had 27 kills for his team. He died 8 times. He had 19 assists, 0 revives. He made 4,200 points of his team's 10,000, while the rest of his team suffered. They won all 3 other maps, but he had a KD of almost 6, a KDR of 6, which is across the board, and he had a 42.15 proficiency rating as a player. That means that in the baseline stats against who they were playing, which was enemy eSports, Praised was a monster. Praise did all the work for the team. This is what this shows. Points, at least in this aspect, say Praise did the most work. Now, it also shows where players don't do as well. Kinne was sitting at a whopping, 1.89, but he had less points than the rest of his team. He wasn't putting in a lot of shots. He was dying a lot. That happens. This is statistically what we need across the board. Now, this is something else that hasn't ever been tracked, and it needs to be. Going forward. So, this is just base stats. This is the totals. This is what they did per map. And how many kills each player did, how many team kills they did, natural kills, how many times they had a long shot, how many times they got a headshot with it. This is all the statistics breakdown for all the players. This is the kind of stat tracking that we need so that when we talk about the best player in history, we have some examples. And this is the week, I don't remember if this week or the next week is the week that Hudson's went off, and Hudson's just started sniping everybody's face off. And I'm going to switch my scene back. See, and we're talking about this. Numbers matter. We don't have any numbers, and it creates this false sense of where the real good players are. Yes, there is a top 8 scheme of players where these players are always going to be competing on a high level and doing really well. The problem is if we're not tracking stats, we're hurting ourselves in the long run. We actually have to check on this. We actually have to take the time to go over the player ratings and actually take everything into account. This stuff is the things that are missed. We haven't had this ever. This is stat tracking that we have to do from this point on, because there are players that perform so much better than the rest of their team. It's backed by statistics. It'll be there. It's a trend. It is more than a trend. It is just straight fact. Praised is, in all terminology, a god at Gears. He is the S tier. He is the highest ranked player. He's considered to be the best player in the game, because Praise does so much with what he's given. He's very proficient at it. He's a very solid player. But the same argument, you can argue that players like Mental, who is also considered one of the best players, does the same thing. There are very good players in the game, and in the scheme of history, we have to have a place where we can say, they're overperforming, they're doing a really good job, they're doing great in this tournament, or we have to pull back and look down in the lower end and say, this player didn't play so well, they had some mistakes, it wasn't as good as it could have been. You know, you write it off to they've had some team chemistry problems, they haven't been practicing as much. Those things can be accounted for. But in the trends of all the events, you have to stat track. And that's something across the board that we need to have, because I'm accountable for what I say on stream 100% of the time. If I say something, I'm accountable for it. I am saying that it is true, and the statement is backed by me. I'm putting my name on it. When we start making random stats and just saying things like this player is the best sniper in the game, or this is the best power weapon player in the game, it's best with XYZ weapon, and there's no stats to back it up, we're just saying things to fill up time and make storylines. And that can't happen anymore, because this is a legitimized esport now. There's going to be 6 major events equaling $1 million. We actually have to be on point with all of our numbers. With that being said, guys, this is Waldo here after MLG Columbus, doing a statistical breakdown and talking about player proficiency for the future of Gears of War. Please like and subscribe, share the video below. I hope you guys like it, and I'll be back with making more content later. Thanks, have a great day.